Hello everyone and welcome to the 13th tutorial in a series of video tutorials for Java programming. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button and click on the bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload on my channel. In the last tutorial I discussed about the relational operator and assignment operator. So in this tutorial I am going to be talking about control statements. Now this topic of control statements was already discussed earlier in previous tutorials, if you remember. So the control statements are like we have if statements, we have else, we have switch case. So we have already discussed these particular statements in brief. So in this tutorial we are going to be discussing those statements in more detail, in more elaborate manner, and we will be also discussing about the loops. So now let us get started. So first of all we need to understand that there are three kinds of statements. So this is all theoretical concepts, so that's why I am explaining with the help of PPT. If it is practical concept, then I will be explaining with the help of the IDE. So now let's get started now. So there are three types of statements. One is selection statement, okay, then after that we have iteration statement, and after that we have the jump statement. So if I talk about selection statements, it is about if, else, switch case, etc. If I talk about iteration statement, it is all about loops. Okay, so we have for loop, we have while loop, we have do while, we have enhanced for loop, etc. Then if I talk about jump statements, we have break statement, we have continue statement, etc. So now let us talk about selection statement. Okay, so one thing which you need to keep in mind is that like in programming language like Java, okay, a program can have more than one path of execution. Okay, so this concept, it will be more clear when I use the IDE. So the one program can have more than one path of execution, and depending upon the if else statement, if that particular condition is true, then the program, it will choose particular path, and if the if condition is false, okay, then the program is going to execute the else part, right? Then the path is going to be something different. Okay, so that is how the selection statements are working. And I already told you the example of selection statements, like we have if else and we have switch case. So now if I talk about iteration statements, okay, then the program, it is going to simply execute the statements repeatedly. As I said earlier in one of my previous tutorials, I told that if you want to execute a set of statements more than once, then you have to use loops. Okay, so until and unless that particular condition is true, the compiler, the program is going to execute the same set of statements more than once. And as soon as the condition, that particular condition, becomes false, it is going to come out of that particular loop, and it is going to go to the next statement written after that particular loop. Okay, so that is how the concept is working. So this tutorial, it is basically kind of revision, and after that I will be discussing in more detail also. So now this jump statements, we have not discussed the jump statements fully. Okay, we have already discussed a break, okay, but we are not discussed continue. So these are the two jump statements which exist in Java. So what are jump statements exactly? Jump statements are those statements, actually whenever you execute a program, it is executed in a linear fashion, like first line is executed, then after that second line will be executed, then after that third line will be executed, and so on and so forth. Okay, but if I use those jump statements like break and continue, okay, it will allow the program to execute in non-linear fashion. Like for example, from the third line it may directly jump to the 10th line, and or if you use continue from the 6th or 7th line, it can directly go to the third line, something like that. So these concepts, it will be more clear when I explain with the help of the IDE. So break statement, I think I already told you like where we use the break. Like in switch case, I explained why we use break statement in one of my previous tutorials. So now continue statement, it is mostly used in loops like while loop, we have for loop, do while loop. So mostly it is used in such kind of loops only. So so both the statements are completely different, and I think these statements, it will be more clear if I explain you with the help of the IDE. So now that's why I'm not going into much of depth right now for this particular slide. So now if I talk about if statement, I think I already explained you like how the if statement is working. All right, so what this if statement is going to do is, if this particular condition is true, it is going to check whether this particular condition is true. If this particular condition is true, then it is going to execute statement 1. Okay, and otherwise if this particular condition becomes false, then it is going to execute statement 2. So that is how the if statement is going to work. Okay, so I think I already explained you how the if statement is working, so I'm not going into much of that. This is just a kind of a little bit of revision, and in the next slide we'll be looking at a completely different concept, that is going to be nested if. So okay, so this is how the if statement is going to work. I already explained in one of my previous tutorials also. Like if this particular condition, whatever I'm going to write in the if statement, if this particular condition is true, then it is going to execute statement 1. But however, by chance if this particular condition becomes false, then it is not going to execute statement 1, it is going to execute statement 2. And one thing which you always need to remember is that if statement 1 is executed, statement 2 will never get executed. And similarly, if statement 2 gets executed, statement 1 will never get executed, because that is how the if statement works. Okay, so now one thing which you need to remember is that if you want to write only one statement inside the if statement, okay, then there is no need to create a block. Okay, so by block I mean you need to open and close that bracket. So you don't need to do that if you are using only one statement inside the if statement. However, if you are using more than one statement, then it is mandatory to create a block. Otherwise, Java by default, it is going to assume that the only line below the if statement, it is going to execute only that, and all other lines below that particular thing, it will be executed regardless of this particular condition if you don't put block. Okay, so these things will be more clear with the help of the IDE, obviously. So now let us go to the next slide. So now this is the nested if statement. Okay, so nested if means an if statement is inside another if statement. Okay, so that is what nested if is all about. One if is within another if. So now here let us look at this particular example. Okay, so if I write this if I explain this particular example, what is happening here? Okay, first of all, I am taking input I variable. I don't know what is the value of I, and that doesn't matter right now. Okay, I am checking whether the modulus I modulus 2 it is equals to 0 or not. That means I am checking whether this is an even number or not. And after that I am checking whether the value of I is equals to 4. Okay, and obviously you can check it, you can see it right here. If I is a even number, then only it will be this particular condition will be checked. Okay, nested if means if this particular condition is true, then only the program execution is going to go to this part. Otherwise, if this condition is false, the program execution, it will directly jump to whatever the statement is written below this particular bracket. Okay, now you need to be extremely careful whenever you are writing else for nested if. Okay, so for example, here let us take this particular example itself. So if I write else below this particular bracket, then you need to remember that this particular bracket, it is going to close this particular block. Okay, so if I write else, then that else will be only for this if. However, if I write else here, that is below the outermost block. If I write else below that, then that is else for if I percentage 2 equals to 0. So you need to remember those concepts, like if I write else below I, if I equals 4, then that is for that particular if. However, if I write else outside the means below the outer if statement, then that else is for if I percentage 2 equals to 0. Okay, so now let us see how exactly this particular code is working. Now let us assume that the value of I is a even number. If I is a even number, okay, then this particular statement will become true. All right, if this particular statement will become true, then the program, it will go to this particular line. If I equals 4, then it will check whether I value of I equals to 4 or not. Now let us assume that the value of I is not equals to 4, then this statement will become false. Okay, then the control will be going to below this nested if statement. Okay, so however, if I assume that I is equals to 4, then whatever is written inside this particular if statement, then that particular code will get executed. So obviously this thing will be more clear when I use the IDE. So explaining this with the help of a theoretical part is not that much easy. So that is how the nested if statement is going to work. And if the I is not a even number, if I is an odd number, then this condition I equals 4, this is not going to be checked, because the outer if statement is itself false, so inner if statement will never get executed. Now if else if ladder. Okay, so this is another kind of way of writing a if statement. So now let us see how exactly this particular concept is going to work. Now if condition 1, statement 1, okay, else if condition 2, statement true. So what exactly is the meaning of this particular concept is that if condition 1 is true, statement 1 will get executed. Okay, and all the else part will get skipped. So this condition 2 will never be checked, condition 3 will never be checked, and the statement 4, this is also not going to get executed. Okay, so this is how the program is going to work. However, let us assume that condition 1 is false. If condition 1 is false, then it is going to check whether condition 2 is true. If condition 2 is true, then it is going to skip condition 3. Okay, it is not going to check that, and it is going to skip statement 4 also. Okay, and however, if let us assume that condition 1 is false, condition 2 is also false. However, if condition 3 is true, then it is going to execute statement 3. Okay, and it is going to skip statement 4 because that is coming inside the else part. Okay, so however, if in such a situation that all these conditions are false, then it is simply going to execute statement 4. So that is how this if else if ladder is going to work. Okay, if a particular condition is true, it is going to execute whatever statement is written inside that particular if statement block. Okay, however, if that condition is false, it is going to check the else if condition. Else if, once again the condition will be checked in else if that particular condition is true, it will get executed, otherwise it will simply move to the next else if. So that is how this particular thing is going to work. If condition 1 is true, statement 1 will get executed, the rest of the conditions will simply get skipped. If condition 2 is true, 1 is false, only statement 2 will get executed, statement 3 will be skipped, statement 4 will be skipped. If condition 3 is true, okay, and obviously 1 and 2 must be false, then only condition 3, the compiler will check condition 3. If condition 3 is true, then it will execute statement 3. However, if all the 3 cases are false, then it is going to execute statement 4. Okay, so now I am going to talk about switch case statement. So obviously this is a kind of way alternative to if else if. So I already explained you how the switch case is working. Okay, so this was the syntax, switch variable. Then after that, case value 1, case value 2, statement 1, statement 2. Then after that we have a default statement also. Default also is there. So now one thing which you need to keep in mind is that I already told you how the switch casement works, but I will be repeating it once again here. So one thing which you need to keep in mind is that duplicate case is not allowed. So what I mean by that is, if you have defined a case 1 in a switch case block, then you cannot define case 1 once again. That is not allowed. That becomes a duplicate case. So if you have defined case 1, then that case 1, you cannot define it again. You cannot redefine it. After that you can define only case 2 or case 3 or case 0 or case 4, like that. Okay, you should not define case 1 once again. So that is the concept of duplicate case. And this particular variable, it can contain only, there is a limitation for that as well. It can contain short, int, char, long. Okay, you can obviously try by exploring string and all those things, but it is going to allow short, int, char, long. So this experimentation I'll be doing in some other tutorial. So right now, since this is a theoretical part, so let me just once again revise how the switch case is going to work. So this variable, it is going to contain a value. Okay, so the value of this particular variable, it is going to get compared with value 1. And if the value of this particular variable, if it is equals to value 1, then statement 1 will get executed. Similarly, if the value which is contained in this particular variable, it is equals to value 2, then statement 2 will get executed. However, let us assume that the value is not equals to value 1, okay, and the value stored here is not equals to value 2, then the default statement will get executed. Okay, so that is how the switch case statement is going to work. Now, nested switch case. Nested switch case is just like a nested if switch within another switch. So that is how the nested switch is going to work. So here how the system is working is, okay, here I have written switch X, then I have written case 1 here. So here the value which is stored in X, it is compared with this particular case. Okay, and the value stored in Y, it is compared with this particular case. Okay, so that is how the thing is going to work. And one thing which you need to remember here is, once again, duplicate case is not allowed. Okay, now you need to understand something. Here I am starting the switch case, I am ending this particular switch case over here. Okay, now this particular switch case, switch Y, okay, so that particular switch case statement, it is containing two cases, which is the same case, case 1, and that is why I have written here that this is not allowed. And if you try to write this inside a program, it is going to give an error. Okay, so now these things we will be doing in more detail with the help of the IDE, with the help of programming. Otherwise, just discussing with the help of theoretical part, it is not going to help. So now I am going to talk about while loop. So I think I already discussed about while loop earlier. So how this particular state, this loop is going to work is, first of all, the condition will get checked. If this particular condition is true, then it is going to execute statement 1 and statement 2. Okay, whatever the statements are written inside this while block, so all the statements will get executed inside this while loop. So that is how the while loop is going to work. However, if the while loop becomes false, okay, then none of the statements will get executed. And one more thing, since this while it is a loop, okay, these statements will repeatedly get executed until and unless that condition becomes false. Okay, so that is how the while loop is going to work. And one another thing is that even this statement, it is valid in Java, while condition, then after that semicolon. I already explain this with the help of a tutorial, that what will happen in, if you put a semicolon after while. So this thing I have already explained in enough detail. So but this particular null statement, okay, empty while statement is also valid in Java. Okay, so now do while loop. So do while loop, in this particular loop, it is executed at least once. At least once means minimum one time it gets executed, regardless of the condition. Okay, and why it is happening like that? The reason is because the condition is checked during the exit point. Okay, here the condition was checked during the entry point. Okay, but here the condition is checked during the exit point. You can check the syntax also. Syntax is do. Okay, none of condition is not getting checked here. So do, then after that here I am writing while, then after that I am checking the condition at this point. So that is why this loop is executed at least once. And the meaning of the third statement is that, most of the times what happens in Java programs, okay, they ask you to create a menu. Okay, and the menu, obviously it has to execute at least once. Main menu, I am talking about main menu. So that main menu has to show at least once, obviously. Then after that, depending upon the input which is given by the user, then depending upon that, the main menu either it will reshow once again, otherwise the main menu it is going to simply terminate. The program is going to simply terminate. So that is why mostly this do while loop, it is useful when you are displaying a main menu. Okay, like when you want to add two numbers, subtract two numbers, like when you are asked to create a calculator in Java. So in that case, you can use the do while loop to create a main menu. Okay, so that's all I am going to talk about in this particular tutorial. Okay, there are two more loops left. Okay, one is for loop, then after that enhanced for loop is there. Then after that I will be discussing about that break and continue statements in more detail. So that's all I'm going to talk about in this tutorial. If you have any questions, then don't hesitate to post in the comment section below. Okay, and I will get back to you when I can. And thank you very much for watching this particular tutorial. And if you liked this particular tutorial, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next tutorial. So till then, bye.